Welcome to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. Hope everyone's having a great weekend. Today, we're going to talk about the tragic accident that took place on June 12th that resulted in the passing of alleged Genovese acting capo Anthony Tony Cakes Conigliaro. Also, want to talk about Fritzy Giovanelli, who was a capo regime for the Genovese family. I received a message from somebody that knew Fritzy very well, and he mentioned that John Pennisi had recently done a show on Fritzy but had the wrong information. I think there was something that he mentioned about tying Fritzy to a package of drugs or something like that. And, that wasn't the case. So I spoke with the gentleman and said that I would do my own research on Fritzy. And so I wanted to share a few things with you. If you could do me a favor, please hit the like button if you like this show. Also, please consider subscribing to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. Without further delay, on to our feature presentation. Yesterday, I got a call from my Brooklyn friend who helps me with doing research on the channel, and he said that Anthony Tony Cakes Conigliaro died on June 12th in a gruesome accident where he was hit by a New York Department of Transportation truck. It was actually posted in the New York Post yesterday. So I started making some phone calls to get some additional information. I put up a post in the community tab and also did a short video last night that discussed the accident, including statements from his attorney, Mathew Mari, who happens to be a friend of the show and somebody that Lee and I interviewed last year. So let me share with you what we know about the accident. And then I want to tell you about this guy, Tony Cakes, who he was in the life. So Anthony Tony Cakes Conigliaro, who was 86 years old and alleged former acting capo regime for the Genovese crime family and a one-time member of Matty the Horse's crew, got ran over on June 12th. Tony Cakes was crossing the street at the Bay Ridge, Brooklyn intersection of 92nd Street and Dahlgren Place when a New York Department of Transportation truck hit him. The truck hit him at a relative high rate of speed where he got decapitated, and his head flew in the air and was recovered several yards from his body on the side of the road. I have additional photos of the accident in the short I did last night that you can see if you want to watch the short. Anyway, authorities said that he was dead upon arriving to the scene, like we wouldn't be able to figure that out. The driver of the vehicle was devastated, and everything we can tell, it was an accident as Tony Cakes didn't look before crossing the street. The driver was a 31-year-old employee for the Department of Transportation. And what he said was that Conigliaro had been crossing Dahlgren Place against a don't walk sign in a marked crosswalk. This guy was driving a Ford F-550 truck, and he was turning on a green light and ended up hitting him. We see also that the driver was seen getting on his knees and praying while another passerby was trying to console him. Tony Cakes actually lived nearby in a small apartment on Dahlgren Place, and Mathew Mari, who was Tony Cakes' attorney, he kind of said this. He said that he knew Conigliaro as Tony Cheesecake, and then other people knew him as Tony Cupcakes and Tony the Dessert Man. He also said that Tony Cakes had got into the business of baking cakes, pastries, and other desserts when he got out of prison, and he did well with it. And he described Tony as a kind gentleman who was soft-spoken and quiet and was always trying to help people. Also, one of the police officers at the scenes made a stupid comment making its rounds. I guess he was trying to be funny. I'm not sure, but he said that Tony Cakes spent his life looking over his shoulder, but he forgot to look both ways before crossing the street. I didn't think that was that funny or tasteful. Tony Cakes does have two children, but he lived alone in his apartment. He seemed to be well liked by his neighbors. Not surprised that none of his neighbors knew about his past life in Cosa Nostra. A couple of people asked if he was related to Alex Conigliaro, and I found nothing tying Alex and Anthony as related. It's possible that they're related somehow, but on my research that I have, nothing's came up. And so I'm going to continue to check on that. If there's any sort of relationship between Alex Conigliaro and Anthony Conigliaro, I'll make sure to point that out on the channel. What did this guy Tony Cakes do in the mob? We know that Anthony Tony Cakes Conigliaro was born in 1938 in New York. He was a made member of the Genovese family. And we also know that he was in the Manhattan crew of the Genovese heavyweight Matty the Horse. Matty the Horse goes back several decades and was a huge moneymaker. He ended up passing away in 2012, but, he was the one that owned Umberto's. When Joey Gallo got rubbed out, he had a lot of different rackets and was in the administration of the Genovese family, but was definitely a heavyweight. I tried to find out when Tony got made, but I could not find anything definitive. I know it had to have been sometime after the books reopened in 1976. And so I would assume, based on what I could find, that he got made sometime in the early 90s, but that's just a guess. Tony was involved mostly in low-level street activities like gambling and loan sharking. The first record I can find of him getting pinched was in 1999 when he was 61 years old. He was arrested for criminal usury, which just means that he was charging an excessive rate of interest on a loan. And then in 2005, which was, his big case that he's involved in, he got caught up in this RICO case. He was charged with racketeering, loan sharking, and extortion conspiracy. And in that case, he got indicted in the Eastern District Court there in Brooklyn. And the prosecutor said that he was a soldier in the Genovese family. Conigliaro ended up pleading guilty and got a 13-month sentence, and he got released by 2008. Tony Cates was in the wholesale cake business. He sold sweets across the New York City area, and he also ran an Italian ice and gelato stand in Little Italy. This is where Tony got his nickname because, he was involved in selling desserts. His company would distribute cakes and pastries to retailers across New York, and, he'd made a decent amount of money. For the past several years, Conigliaro had been living a quiet life by himself in his Bay Ridge apartment there on Dahlgren Place. And as far as I can tell, he hadn't been active for several years. As far as the driver who hit Tony Cakes, no arrests have been made yet. Things are being investigated by both NYPD and the Department of Transportation. So I'll make sure to let you know if anything else comes up on this case. Moving on to Fritzy Giovanelli. He was a longtime Genovese member. He was a Capo regime. He was close to Chin Gigante. He was mostly involved with gambling and loan sharking. He was friends with a lot of the Queens guys, including the Gambino Angelo Ruggiero. One of the things interesting about Fritzy was that he had a mole within the federal courts that would give him information about upcoming indictments. That mole had never been identified, but many people are saying it was a court stenographer, and whoever this person was providing information to Fritzy for over 20 years. Fritzy was involved in a couple of high-profile cases. He ended up in his life getting sent to prison at least 3 times. These charges was related to gambling, loan sharking. He had a parole violation. But in 1984, by that time, Fritzy already had somebody within the federal court system that was given information about law enforcement activities. And in 1984, Giovanelli got a hold of a draft copy of an FBI affidavit, and that affidavit noted the existence of installed bugs inside the home of Angelo Ruggiero. There was a report of Fritzy giving something to Ruggiero. It was in a bag, and I think it was speculation that might have been drugs or something, but it had nothing to do with drugs. So what Fritzy gave Angelo Ruggiero was just this FBI affidavit. And so the bug that was in Angelo Ruggiero's house was part of a major probe into the heroin trafficking ring that the feds had linked to Ruggiero. As actually Ruggiero's brother that was the kingpin of that, but he had gotten killed in the plane crash. And so Ruggiero, Quack Quack, was the one that was involved in this. And then it ended up bringing down people like Gene Gotti and others. And it took 5 or 6 years before, these guys ended up, getting put into prison. But, what happened was when Ruggiero was given that document, Fritzy basically brought the investigation to a complete halt. that was what happened between Ruggiero and Fritzy. Then next, we've got the 1986 murder of a NYPD detective that Fritzy got charged with. In that case, you had Detective Anthony Venditti. He was 34 years old. He was shot 4 times, including twice in the head. It happened in Ridgewood, Queens. Venditti and his partner had been tailing Fritzy when the shooting occurred. In that case, Fritzy went on to face 4 trials. All those ended up in a hung jury, except for the one federal trial, which convicted him. But that was for racketeering only. And so the verdict was overturned on appeal. In that shooting, Venditti's partner, Kathleen Burke, was wounded in the shooting. So let's break down the actual events of that night. So it's 8 p.m. on the night of January 21st, 1986. We have these 2 detectives trailing Fritzy. They trailed him to a destination in the vicinity of Myrtle and St. Nicholas Avenues. These 2 detectives were part of an organized crime task force. They had been staking out Fritzy as part of an ongoing investigation into mob activities in the area. So Venditti had exited his car and then went into Castillo's diner. He was there for a little bit, but then when he left Castillo's diner, he was confronted by 3 men. These 3 men shoved him against a wall. And then his partner, Kathleen Burke, saw what was happening. So she rushed over to give him assistance. She started yelling, issuing a warning. She keeps on saying in every trial that Fritzy was one of the 3 people. But anyway, seconds later, these 3 suspects pulled out guns. They opened fire. Venditti was shot 4 times, like I said, including twice in the head and twice in the back. Burke was shot in the chest, but she recovered from it. These 3 men fled the scene. Shortly after, and so Venditti died. Burke's in the hospital, surgery, and then Fritzy, and then the 2 others arrested was Stephen Maltese and Carmine Guattieri. No one's been convicted of the slayings. In the years after the shooting, Detective Venditti's widow and the parents held the murder against Burke. They believed that Burke didn't do her job. She could have prevented what had happened. There's also reports that possibly she had shot Venditti in a case of friendly fire. So the problem was that Detective Burke, she claims that it was these guys that did the shooting, but her version of the events were never corroborated by the other witnesses to what happened. All we know is that went to 3 different trials, state trials, hung jury on each one. Then you had the federal trial. Fritzy was convicted of, was not the murder. It was a conspiracy charge. And as far as who actually took out Detective Venditti, we'll never know. The case has been officially closed. Okay, finally, I just want to discuss the channel, a few things that we're working on. I also wanted to get your thoughts on it. So the channel was started for the history shorts. I wanted to provide the history of Cosa Nostra in 60 seconds or less, and as well, though, I'm trying to do the long form content. I know that doing long form content on history is not always easy, but it's something that, I want to be able to provide for you guys. So we're going to have some mini documentaries. I'm looking at doing, 15, 20-minute documentaries on different events, biographies, that type of thing. And then also wanted to get your thoughts on the idea I'm considering. I'm thinking about doing either a weekly or monthly live. It would be the same time each week or each month, depending on the frequency. Is that something you'd like for me to do? For me, I enjoyed the dialogue that we have. I love the comments. I love the interaction. I want to get to know everybody. I think it would, be a lot of fun to do an occasional live. However, I don't want to put up a live just to put out a live. And at the same time, if a weekly or monthly live is not something that you find interesting, then, we won't do it. So I'm thinking I'll put up a poll. I just want to see what people think. We can go from there. But for me, I'm just looking at how I can better engage with everybody. I enjoy engaging with all of you. And I know that I'm involved in the lives that Lee Cole is doing with Wrestling the Devil. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of laughs. We have a lot of people that come on. So, I'm hoping to do something similar, but if it's not something that you would tune into or find interesting, then, I won't do it. And then, I'm continuing to work on doing interviews. I really want to provide good interviews. I want to provide things that all of you would find interesting. And so, feel free. I noticed lately I've been getting a lot of messages like in Facebook Messenger, in Instagram, TikTok, and some of those I didn't even see. Some of them had been there for several weeks and months. So I'm getting into working on these other social media outlets where I'm getting information or I'm getting messages. And so I'll make sure to respond, immediately. I mean, I just didn't get notifications of them. And so, I feel bad that people have written me that, they're probably thinking that, I'm ignoring them, but that's not the case. So with that said, if there's anything you want to reach me about, if there's an interview, if there's information that you want me to check into or a lead or anything like that, you can contact me as well at jproctor70@gmail.com. And I'll have that listed here. But like I said, I just want to make this community inclusive for everybody. I want everyone to feel like they're a part of it. And, I'm going to also be adding more photos to the community page. I'm trying to do more with the community page, but, I've been very blessed by, the response I'm getting from folks. It's been predominantly, overwhelmingly positive, and, that means a lot to me. So thank you. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please hit the like button and subscribe to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor if you haven't already. With that said, everybody take care, stay safe, and God bless you always.